The honourable member for Nelson.
Thank you, Mr President. I rise to debate motion number 5, standing in my name, and I'll read the motion to begin our discussion. I move that 1, that the Legislative Council notes a recommendation 12.1 contained in the Commission of Inquiry into the Tasmanian Government's response to child sexual abuse in institutional settings final report dated August 2023, which states the Tasmanian Government should close Ashley Youth Detention Centre as soon as possible. B, that in correspondence to the Premier dated the 6th of October 2023 from 15 community and social justice organisation signatories, they expressed extreme concern for the safety of children held at Ashley Youth Detention Centre, AYDC, particularly in light of the Commission of Inquiry's final report's assessment of current and live risks for detainees and recommendation for urgent closure, and requested 1, the urgent appointment of specialist forensic experts to assess all detained children and identify their treatment needs to plan for their care in community, and 2, the development of a multidisciplinary working group. C, that on the 11th of October 2023, a coalition of justice and social service organisations, including Taskforce, Prisoners Legal Service Tasmania and 54 Reasons, publicly released an open letter to the Premier in which they called for the urgent closure of AYDC, along with the appointment of specialist forensic experts to assess all detained children and identify their treatment needs to plan for their care in community, and the development of a multidisciplinary working group. D, the public statement made by the Commissioner for Children and Young People on Wednesday, 22nd of May 2024, in which the Commissioner, 1, revealed that at the beginning of the week of Monday, the 20th of May this year, there were 26 children and young people held at the AYDC, the highest number the Commissioner had ever seen, and 2, called for urgent action from the Government, including the establishment of a special task force to reduce the numbers of children held on remand at AYDC. E, the public statement issued by Taskforce also on 22nd May 2024 in support of the Commissioner for Children and Young People's assessment of the safety risks posed to children and young people at the AYDC, and reiterated the Commissioner's call for an urgent task force to address the number of children at AYDC to be established. And 2, that the Legislative Council calls upon the Government to immediately form a multidisciplinary task force to design and implement interim measures to remove children on remand from AYDC, while the Youth Justice Blueprint continues to be developed as a more permanent reform. Now, Mr President, on Wednesday, the 5th of June this year, the Mercury newspaper ran an article stating, and I quote, "The Liberal Party promised to close Ashley Youth Detention Centre 1,000 days ago." Well, Mr President, to date it is now 1,013 days since that promise was made, and the calendar pages keep on turning over. To place that 1,013 days and counting into context, I wish to revisit a few pertinent statements made about Ashley Youth Detention Centre, which I will refer to from now on as AYDC. Firstly, to quote, "I've long held the concern that the allegations of historical abuse and the ongoing speculation around Ashley is not conducive to achieving the best practice outcomes that we have strived for." And, to quote, "I've made a decision, enough is enough." That was the former Premier, Peter Gutwein, reported by the ABC on the 10th of September 2021, following Mr Gutwein's public commitment made the previous day to undertake, and I quote, "a major systemic change in our youth justice system by closing the AYDC, and to introduce a new service delivery model in its place by the end of 2024. Let's keep that in mind, Mr President. In 2021, the then Premier declared enough is enough when it came to AYDC. That was the commencement date of the 1,000-day countdown, and we should keep track following that statement. We should be on track following that statement to be witnessing the preparations for the AYDC's imminent closure within months by that initial schedule declared by the then Premier back in 2021. Instead, the current government has blown out the closure schedule until 2026 and possibly longer. Mr President, as members here would know, on 15th of March 2021, the Commission of Inquiry was established to examine allegations and incidents of child sexual abuse in Tasmanian government institutions. The Commissioners provided a final public hearing on the 30th of August last year before handing their final report to the Governor. During her closing address, President of the Commission of Inquiry, Marcia Neve, stated, and I quote, "It is our view that the Ashley Youth Detention Centre should be closed as a matter of urgency. and this: the treatment of children in out-of-home care and youth detention is of particular concern, and improving safety for them should be a priority. Then the Commission of Inquiry's final report was publicly released the following month on 26th of September. As referred to in section 1A of the motion before us, Mr President, these public statements highlighted by the Commissioners during their closing address was reiterated as a formal recommendation in the final report. Recommendation 12.1 states the Tasmanian Government should close Ashley Youth Detention Centre as soon as possible. And further, on page 29 of the executive summary, the Commission's final report states, and I quote, "We support the Tasmanian Government's decision to close Ashley Youth Detention Centre. We consider it not fit for purpose as a youth detention facility and should be shut down as soon as possible. We also welcome the willingness of the Tasmanian Government to fundamentally rethink the youth justice model in Tasmania to one that is more evidence-based and therapeutic. The current model is not working for staff, detainees or the broader community. We were disappointed that there are some indications the Tasmanian Government is reconsidering its previous announcement to close the centre by 2024. We hold grave concerns for the safety and wellbeing of all detainees at the centre. While we acknowledge that the process of replacing Ashley Youth Detention Centre is complex, we consider the closure of the centre should be treated with urgency." End of quote. Yet, Mr President, for those yet to read through all the volumes of the report, you may be interested to know in the final report, the word search for Ashley returns 2,964 instances, while the acronym AYDC returns at least 306 mentions. Time constraints now prevent me from raising all those hundreds and thousands of instances where Ashley was discussed during the Commission of Inquiry proceedings. However, I can assure you the report's extensive discussion of AYDC over the 3 volumes that relate to youth justice is a gruelling, traumatising, heart-wrenching and painful read. Mr President, I've revisited the earlier commitments made by the Liberal government via the former Premier to close AYDC. I now wish to turn to recent statements made by the current Premier and Minister. In his ministerial statement delivered on the resumption of Parliament on the 23rd of May this year, the current Premier reiterated his government's commitment to, and I quote, "build a child-safe future for our state and to hear and act on the voices of those who have suffered abuse in our systems and institutions, and to work together to achieve enduring change." The Minister for Children and Youth issued a media statement last week on the 13th of June in which he stated, and I quote, "There is nothing more important than the safety and well-being of our children and young people." In fact, the Minister asserts I quote, "a laser focus is being applied to achieve this." Well, Mr President, let us apply that laser focus to highlight some concrete realities to go alongside this rhetoric. On the 22nd of May this year, the Commissioner for Children and Young People served up some harsh reality when she told ABC statewide mornings, and I quote, "This morning I think we have 24 children in AYDC. Earlier this week on Monday we had 26, which is an all-time high while I've been the Commissioner, and I'm in my 6th year, and it is the highest numbers of children we have seen in detention for more than a decade." During the same interview, the Commissioner also raised her concerns that due to the high numbers of detainees and low numbers of staff, management is relying upon, and I quote, "the isolation of children to be able to operate the centre in a safe way. This has become the new normal for detention in Tasmania." To be clear, Mr President, isolation is the same as lockdown, essentially. Lockdown has become the new norm for detention, for youth detention in our state. The Children's Commissioner went on to state that isolation erodes children's well-being and does not uphold their rights. The Children's Commissioner has identified this. While I acknowledge that the incarceration rates of children and young people at AYDC can fluctuate day to day, with the recent numbers provided to Parliament last week by the Minister probably also now out of date, they still reiterate the fact that a shocking number of children, of detainees at AYDC are on remand. For example, last Wednesday, the figures provided by the Minister stated that as of that morning, there were 17 young people in AYDC, 11 on remand, 6 detained, ranging from 14 to 18 years of age. 11 children on remand at that time, held in that place where isolation and lockdown, according to the Commissioner for Children, is the norm. According to the Children's Commissioner, and for whom the Commission of Inquiry holds grave concerns for their safety and wellbeing. That's almost 65% of the detainees that are there on remand, which means they have not been convicted and should be presumed innocent until such a conviction occurs. And to highlight the extent to which this is the norm, of which the Children's Commissioner warns, I refer back to answers I received to questions I put to the government in September last year on this same topic, which indicated at that time the total number of detainees held from the 1st of July 2023 to the 3rd of September 2023 was 26. Of those detainees, 7 were sentenced through a court hearing, leaving 19 young people unsentenced and on remand. Those unsentenced detainees had been held at that time for durations ranging from 2 days to 205 days in an institution where the norm is isolation, essentially lockdown. The deeply sad truth is that many of these children on remand are placed in AYDC because it is regarded they have nowhere else suitable to go while waiting for their cases to come before the court. It's not surprising this belief is held, considering the significant dearth under current arrangements of relevant services for children in these circumstances. This is coupled with the complete lack of a suitable early stage assessment and referral service for children coming into contact with police and the youth justice system. Our state has an appalling lack of housing options to support unaccompanied homeless children of this age. Tasmania continues to have no alcohol and drug rehab services for children of this age and incredibly limited mental health services for children in these situations. In fact, our CAM service, Children and Adolescent Mental Health Service, won't take these children to deal with the trauma issues that they experience. Mr. President, we would find that many of these children are or have been in the out-of-home care system, but the state has not effectively provided support adequate to meet their need during the time that they were or are under state care. All these inadequate services and supports are a choice, the lack of which could be solved by a requisite level of commitment and investment and urgency. There is also, Mr. President, a knowledge gap in the police service and the courts about the services and supports which are currently available to children coming into custody. If the range of services and supports available are not known or understood, then all roads lead to AYDC. There is currently no system in place that provides an assessment of need when a child first comes into police custody or as part of the bail support planning process. Assessments done at AYDC when children are already incarcerated is too late. As they are incarcerated at that point, many of the services that they may have been linked up with cannot provide services to them while incarcerated. Why don't we have a youth justice worker automatically notified when a child comes into custody? If an assessment of the child's needs isn't done prior to them being presented at court, any supports or services which may have been identified cannot be considered. This contributes to more and more children being sent to AYDC on remand for whom there could have been services and supports provided within a community setting if an assessment and referral was undertaken at the earliest opportunity. So not only do we lock up these children on remand without first assessing their needs and our capacity to support them in the community, we lock them up in a place recognised as so fundamentally unsafe. The Commission of Inquiry stated it should be closed as a matter of urgency due to the risk to children held there. Mr. President, it's worthwhile to also apply the laser focus here on the concerning issue of isolation, as mentioned by the Children's Commissioner. An over-reliance on isolation and lockdown is not only a breach of Tasmania's policy settings, it is in contravention of international conventions of which Australia is a signatory and which therefore should bind the state of Tasmania. For example, the United Nations protocol known as the Mandela Rules provide signatory states such as Australia with detailed guidelines for protecting the rights of persons deprived of their liberty, from pre-trial detainees to sentenced prisoners. Yet in his most recent annual report of 2022-23, Tasmania's custodial inspector states this: I have not previously observed lockdowns on a systemic level in youth detention in Tasmania, and it is a disturbing precedent. It was the subject of negative comment by the United Nations Committee Against Torture in concluding observations on the 6th Periodic Report of Australia with respect to the Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. It said on 5th of December 2022, the committee is seriously concerned about D, the the practice of keeping children in solitary confinement, in particular at Ashley Youth Detention Centre in Tasmania, which contravenes the Convention and the Nelson Mandela rules. That was a quote from the Custodial Inspector's Annual Report 2022-23, pages 25 to 26, and he is referring to the OPCAT visit, which raised concerns. Mr. President, this is not just me saying that the AYDC is fundamentally and systemically contravening the rights of our children and young people. It's not just Taskforce and civil society, nor is it just the Children's Commissioner or even the Custodial Inspector. It is the United Nations